Well, hello there. It's the Range Ronin, and I thank you for stopping by to view another chapter in the Range Ronin Chronicles Pistol Series. I hope that you liked today's presentation. Without further ado, let me get started. For me, first was shooting the Sig Sauer P365 X, a 12-round, very compact pistol that I felt struck the right balance for concealed carry. The feeling soon evaporated, though, after firing the P365 XL, both with and without optic. I would gain a longer barrel length over the P365X. The P365X was soon forgotten, and a P365 XL without optic came home with me. Then came the P365 X-Macro, a 17-round version in a package size not unlike the 10-round Glock G48, my daily summer carry, and it came with a better trigger, and I could get it with a manual safety, something that I prefer on a pistol with such a delightful and light trigger like the one with the P365 XL and X-Macro. I knew that I had to have one. So, allow me to take you on a review of the Sig Sauer P365 X-Macro that has turned into a long-term journey as, what I think, a perfect summer carry firearm. There is, at the time I write this script, 16 variants of the Sig Sauer P365 pistol. Among the many other manufacturers of this size firearm, P365 has stood apart from the rest for various reasons. First and foremost, probably, is the fact that it is a Sig Sauer product. Since 1853, the origin of the company, Sig Sauer's growth and diversification is quite a story in itself, and I invite you to research its history. My first involvement with a Sig Sauer product was the P220, a 45 ACP chambered handgun that I carried as a Leo. Soon after, a P226 graced my hands, followed by a P230 and P239. Of this initial involvement, the P239 is the only survivor. The Glock G48 started a revolution in light, high-capacity firearms that many have followed and, in my mind, have surpassed Glock in many areas. In 2017, the Sig Sauer P320 was accepted into our military community as the M17, a full-size unit with manual thumb safety, and the M18, a carry-size pistol, also with a manual thumb safety, due to the modularity aspect where one fire control unit, or FCU, could be used in any variant of the P320. On August 24, 2020, Sig Sauer Incorporated announced the Sig Sauer Custom Works P365 Fire Control Unit. As Sig Sauer stated,
the P365 pistol was groundbreaking because it brought an unprecedented 10+1, 12+1, or 15+1 capacity to a micro-compact everyday carry pistol. The revolutionary design and innovation of the P365 took the market by storm to become the world's most popular everyday carry pistol, began Tom Taylor, Chief Marketing Officer and Executive Vice President, Sig Sauer Incorporated. Now with the introduction of the P365 Fire Control Unit, we have brought an entirely new level of customization and personalization to the P365 platform. America's most popular micro-compact pistol is now also the most customizable.
As I waded through the many models, several stood out as, what I felt, would be suitable for me. I didn't need fancy, I didn't need optics, I didn't need rails. But some things we live with, right? The P365 was selected based on reviews that my son-in-law carried one at the time, and his impression was favorable. As I mentioned previously, P365 XL followed, but I still refused to give up on my Glock G48, even though the P365 XL was the superior firearm. The P365 X-Macro garnered my attention so much that when I held it for the first time, I knew that it was the chosen one, and I had to act on receiving one into the family, and I did just that. There was something about this P365 X-Macro that spoke volumes to me, and now I'm going to tell you all about it. During this review, I am going to be making many comparisons to my Glock G48, a pistol that I have carried for most of the hot summer months here in Georgia. I could compare it with the Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro that I have also carried, but the G48 was my EDC summer carry for this year, and I have spent more time with it than with the Hellcat Pro. Perhaps this review is just to justify why I am now choosing the Sig Sauer P365 X-Macro. Thinking out loud, if you will. I'll begin with taking a look at a general comparison between the two. Here you'll see the comparison, and I'll just let them list out for you to view. With some basic comparisons out of the way, let me really dig into the Sig Sauer P365 X-Macro, or as I am simply going to call it from here on, Macro. The slide of the G48 has vertical serrations, front and rear. The Macro, on the other hand, is a more sculptured front and rear with very nice slanted serrations that really give the hand something to purchase when moving the slide to the rear, for whatever reason. The slide width is nearly identical with both pistols, the G48 being 1.0 inch, with the Macro being 1.1 inch. Not enough to cavil about. Sig Sauer pistols have been known for their high bore axes. Not so with the Macro. Bore axis is low, being comparable to the G48, G43, G43X, and some others. The lower bore axis really helps in the pointing of the pistol. With a high hand on the grip and a slide closer to the hand, Macro is an excellent point and shoot interface. The front sight of the G48 is the standard polymer white dot, while the front sight of the macro is a Sig night sight. The rear sight of the G48 is the standard Glock white outline polymer notch sight, whereas the rear sight of the macro is also a Sig night sight that provides an excellent sight picture. The sights on my G48 were changed to True Glow XS night sights for a much improved sight picture over the standard Glock sights. There was no need, at least for me, to change the sights on the macro. Both pistols exhibit an excellent effluent opening for getting rid of spent ammunition, while excellent extractors work very well in both pistols. The G48 is not optics ready, but the macro is, and the macro is ready to receive a Sig Romeo 0 optic directly. I have no plans for an optic. Switching to the frame at the front, the G48 is without rail, while the macro has a 3-point Picatinny rail for mounting accessories. My personal preference is no rails, and the G48 meets that preference, but I will say that Sig has done a good job in minimizing the rail footprint on the macro. Obvious differences in trigger guards exist, with the G48's trigger guard being of the flat-face design with grooves to hold the support hand forefinger if needed. The trigger guard for the macro is rounded and without texture. Trigger guards on both pistols are nicely undercut to allow the shooting hand as high of a hold on the handle as possible. The G48 has no thumb safety. Although a standard P365 comes with no thumb safety, I have one on my P365 XL, and I did want to include one on this macro. The reason? I will get to that in a moment. The rear of the grip on both pistols incorporates a nice extension to prevent the shooting hand from sliding upward on the grip. The extension of the macro is just a tad more predominant over the G48. The grip length of the G48 is very close to that of the G19, whereas the grip length of the macro exceeds that slightly, and with just slightly enough length where my hands fit very completely on the grip. Given that the macro's magazine can house 17 rounds as compared to the 10-round magazine of the G48, I really give Sig a hats off for coming up with a magazine design that can house the same amount of ammunition as a Glock 17, but in a more compact unit. It also has 2 more available rounds than the Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro. The grip angle and texture difference are readily seen and felt. Because of the 22-degree grip angle of the G48 and most Glock pistols, most often the complaint is that the angle of the grip causes shots to go high, because the angle projects the muzzle higher on presentation to the target. So that to correct this, the wrist must be adjusted downward to level the slide and bring the front sight down to align with the rear sight. The grip angle of the macro is more of the standard 18 degrees that my hand more closely associates with, and, to me, results in a better hold. The macro's grip girth also agrees with my hand, not so much in size, but in texture. With my G48, I had to add a grip sleeve to get a much better, more positive grip, as I find the texture more on the mild side than I like. Not to mention the sleeve made the grip width feel better. With the macro, the texture makes my hand feel like it has a better hold over the G48. The G48 has no way of resizing the grip to different shooters' hands, as do many of the later generations of Glock pistols. The macro, on the other hand, comes with multiple adapters that can be used to tailor the grip to one's hand. I have yet to experiment with the grip adapters that came with the macro. The installed unit, which I believe is their medium offering, seemed to fit my hand very well. Some experimentation will ensue. While the macro does come with grip adapters, a beaver tail version is not needed, as comes with numerous late model Glock pistols. The extension at the rear is a dominant feature and does keep the hand from getting in the way of the slide, or vice versa. The G48 magazine is the standard Glock polymer coated steel and as with most Glock magazines, work well and can be disassembled for maintenance, or, in the case of my G48 magazines, the addition of a pinky hanger extension. The Macro magazine is steel and, as with Glock magazine, works very well and can be disassembled for maintenance. The magazine is not exactly what I would call flush fit, and do add to the grip length. That might bother some folks. I will also tell you that magazines for the Macro are expensive. I was able to snag 17-round X-Macro magazines from Gun Mag Warehouse for $13 less than the $59.99 regular price. Still, that hurt the bank account. Now, let me work my way to the triggers of both pistols. The trigger on my G48 is a stock lock curved polymer unit with the integrated trigger safety lever that prevents the trigger from entering the frame unless the trigger safety is pressed in with the trigger. Glock triggers are not their finest feature, with their mushy feel when the trigger is pulled to the rear until the striker is released, a byproduct of what Glock calls a double-action trigger. Of course, triggers can be replaced with better ones, but I have a penchant to leave whatever triggers came with a pistol to stay with the pistol, as long as they are suitable for defensive purposes, and most Glock triggers are. As you may or may not know, Glock triggers stage the striker, in that the pistol is partially cocked at rest, and completes the cocking cycle as the trigger is pulled until the striker is released. The trigger on the Macro is like a breath of fresh air with its flat-face design and no internal safety lever. The trigger feels lighter than what it actually is because of this design, and a short travel with a near 90-degree trigger break with no over travel and quick reset does make this trigger desirable. The trigger is one of the main features why I like the Macro. While it is not the best trigger that I have pulled, it is a very acceptable trigger. Trigger pull weight came in at 4 pounds 3 ounces with a 5-pull average, but I am sure that will become lighter as the pistol is fired. The Macro trigger is part of the FCU, Fire Control Unit, whereas the Glock action is comprised of a number of individual parts that contribute to the synergy, or lack of, with Glock triggers. Which brings me back to the thumb safety thing. Because of the finer attributes of the Macro trigger, and that it does not have an integrated trigger safety, I felt that a thumb safety was warranted. I just feel better with a thumb safety than not. The thumb safety is ambidextrous, and it is great for both left and right-handed operators. The thumb safety levers have enough of a footprint for easy disengagement, but I do need to engage it with the thumb of my sport hand, and with any compact, subcompact, or micro-compact pistol, the thumb safety location causes too much shift in the shooting hand to engage. As far as other controls, slide lock left side only, as is the takedown lever. The magazine release button is on the left side originally, but can be changed to the right side. The magazine release button sits below a recess on both sides of the frame to accommodate forefinger and thumb. One last thing to mention is that although the Macro is available with a compensator, the X-Macro Comp, mine is not compensated. While I do have one revolver, the Taurus 627 Tracker, that is compensated, compensation feature does not make me a better or more proficient shooter, nor does a rail, nor does an optic. What does make me a better shooter is practice. Practice and more practice. And that's my final word on compensators, handgun or long gun. Well, that's about it for the features. Let me briefly mention maintenance. As far as maintaining the Macro, everything you need to know is contained in the manual. All variants of the P365 disassembled are lubricated, inspected, assembled, and function checked in the same manner. Thumb safety simply adds another step to the function check. Now, let me take you and the macro to the range for the first time functioning and accuracy session. I believe that you will be interested in this first outing. When taking a firearm to the range for the first time, it sometimes can be a crapshoot. I am sure that you have experienced not so full confidence in the firearm or with your authority over the firearm the first time out. Only after firing a few rounds do you become accustomed to the firearm, and finding your rhythm with it may be successful or not at all. My goal with any of my range sessions is to evaluate the firearm's basic functioning and accuracy, and then share my evaluation with you, for whatever that is worth. You John Wick types may want to bypass this segment. It is all so very boringly basic. I have shot the Sig Sauer P365 XL with and without optic, and although they were excellent pistols, the macro, being a bit different, could bring about a different story. So, let me get into the shooting part, make comments throughout the session, and, as by usual, provide a synopsis at the end of the session. During this review, I have compared the macro to the Glock G48. I did so because the G48 has been my summer carry, and I have spent some quality time shooting it. I could have easily compared the macro to the Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro, one of which I also have, and maybe that would have been a better comparison. But that comparison has already been done by others, and my comparison would only muddle the mix, as I would have very little to add that would be of value. I will say that I do like the Hellcat Pro, and I will also say that I like the macro just a bit better. In closing, I do think that if you are seeking a micro-compact pistol with excellent ergonomics and excellent trigger, very good night sights, optic readiness, and a 17-round capacity, you need to look at the Sig Sauer P365 X-Macro. No, seriously, you need to check this one out. Well, here I am again, at the end of another review. For those who stuck with me throughout this review, I thank you very much, and I hope that I will see you again in the near future. Until we do meet again, take care of yourselves. Be vigilant, be armed, and be safe out there.